California.
Okay, good evening.
We're
Ready.
Here we go.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
we're here, it's Tuesday, July 16. We're here in our last meeting before the summer break, and we'll get right into it. So we have a quorum, and Dick will be filling in and voting and hearing applications as well. So we'll have 4 members here working tonight. So is there a motion to open the meeting?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. A lot of enthusiasm, it's really terrific. Okay, our first item is a public hearing. It's the first time we've seen it. This is Hudson Hills subdivision, Amsterdam Park. And it's 25 Hope Cross Road and 121 Pinesbridge Road. This is an application for a site development plan amendment for the clearing and grading limit line and wetlands permit. Amsterdam Park proposed sanitary sewer service line. So I think we have some information being presented to us by town staff on this.
Do you want to open the public hearing?
Yeah, I think we'd like to open the public hearing. Thank you, Felicia. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, I think you're ready, Bob.
Okay, I have Miss Sabrina helping me out with the technical presentation because I don't want to mess it up, so I leave it to a pro. So she's gonna bring it on up, over to share screen. Number 1 with the Amsterdam sheet number 1.
Hang on a minute, Bob, I gotta find it.
Well, she's finding out, I can just briefly explain it.
Sure.
I wrote a memo last time, basically the town of Newcastle is planning proposed improvements at the Amsterdam Park Heritage House located in obviously Amsterdam Park. The proposed improvements are intended to allow additional programming for the Recreation and Parks Department. They have a summer camp program that runs pretty much 6 weeks every summer over the past several years. They'd like to increase the amount of campgoers and staff that attend those meetings. So what we're doing, thanks to Jill, we're getting I believe a CREST grant to pay for most of this work that we're gonna be doing. And what we're gonna do, since we can't really get septic on-site septic system there, we're going to use easements that were done when the Hudson Hills subdivision came into place in 1998. And if John, you want to chime in on that, on the easements that were used and the rights we have for that, if you want to give some sort of segue into that, or whatever you want to do, John.
Well, I mean, it certainly gives us the easement certainly gives us the right to install, maintain, repair, and I guess remove the sewer line. That's what it was designed for.
Thank you, John. And that was developed many, many years ago. It was signed by
Not that many years ago, Bob.
1998, I believe.
Not
they
that
have an
many years
agreement.
ago. I mean, I know it was last century, but it wasn't that long ago.
But anyway, with that being said, that's the reason for it. Basically, if we pull it up, I can explain it. But in essence, what we're doing is we're gonna be picking up bathroom facilities we're gonna be installing. Thank you, Sabrina, so much. Let me get to my thing I like to do best and draw all over the place. Annotate. Let's see.
Bob, are the bathrooms going to be inside of the existing building, or is there a new building proposed to be built?
The bathrooms are gonna be right, yeah, don't move the finger around. The bathrooms are gonna be right here. We're gonna put 2 bathrooms there which are gonna be ADA compliant, right where the purple is. And then if you follow my purple, we're gonna pick up the bathroom effluent, come out here, and we're gonna bring it down here. The reason I'm bringing this route is I wanna keep it outside the wetlands buffer, which is 150 feet. Now, at this point around here, there's a low point where the grade's dropping that way down. And then when we come to the next sheet, which we don't need to see right now, but that's what we plan on doing. We're gonna pick up the effluent in 2 bathrooms. basically based on the flows, based on the amount of people, based on gallons per day, based on the actual water usage we have there. And then we're gonna put it in a pre-designed system, which is pre-engineered, pre-designed, there's 2 pumps in there, 2 duplex pumps, which is gonna pump it up to the next phase, so if you bring the next one up, that'd be great.
This one?
Yes, ma'am, thank you so much. So basically, where we just were is right here. That was the low point right here, guys. So from this point, this is where we need the pump station. So it's gonna pump it from here along this line, which is along the easements, comes along the 121 Pines Bridge, gonna make a bend, and then it ties into the gravity section of the force main along Pines Bridge Road on the westerly side, which heads this way down towards us. Yes,
Bob,
ma'am.
if I could just interrupt you, I just want you to know that the computer is appearing a little bit delayed. So as you're talking, it's gonna take a couple minutes for the drawing to show up here.
Okay, so I have to go slower.
Yes.
Well, that should be easy for me. So I guess now you can see all the purple guys?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, basically that line I just drew in is gonna be mimicking the new force main. That's gonna be pretty much a 2-inch pressurized sewer service line, which is gonna be picked up from the pump station, which is gonna be located on the Amsterdam property. And it's gonna come up, that difference in elevation is about 32 feet to the gravity manhole located on the main line, which used to be the IBM sewer, but now we took it over from IBM after so many years of paperwork that they have given us showing that it does work satisfactory. They maintained it over the years, and now we do. So basically, that is the design in a nutshell. Basically, we're gonna be using pretty much in-house forces to do it. DPW is gonna be helping us out quite a bit to do the excavation, do a lot of the renovation at the Amsterdam house. And pretty much what we're trying to do here is use a plumber to do all the plumbing for the piping. Because this piping will have to be installed by a plumber, connected into the manhole by a plumber, and also all of the work for the gravity section, which goes from the pump pit back up to the Amsterdam carriage house, where the 2 new bathrooms will be, to provide accommodations for the programming that Rex and Recreation and Parks will have in the future. So, if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Bob, can you talk about the, before you have public comments, would you talk about the necessity for that 90-degree turn we asked about last time? And of course, it always seems to be something that is vulnerable when you have these kinds of lines, but I think you explained last time that there were some engineering needs in terms of where the manhole covers are, where the manholes are.
Well, that is correct. This purple line I'm drawing now, but you're probably gonna see in a few seconds. I just drew it. It's going from south to north. Could everyone see it?
Yep.
That is the pressurized force main. You just can't tie a force main into a pressurized force main. So we have to go into the gravity section where it starts, which is this section right down here, which I circled before. That's why we have to make that bend. And the bend will not be as pronounced as that, because what we plan to use now is what's called a polyline. It's pretty much one continuous made pipe, which comes in 500-foot lengths. And this one here from the pump pit to the manhole is approximately 525 feet. We're just gonna need one junction box and make specialized equipment, which the plumber will do to make certain those joints are sealed tight. I know we had some concerns from a neighbor, which we plan on addressing, and I'm gonna have Dennis answer one of them in a minute. But these will be more sweeping than what I show on the plan. because the poly line can only do a certain amount of curvature during that span of time. So that will be what we're doing, Robert, and hopefully that explains the reason why it has to go east to west and then south, north to south.
And you have enough room in your in your easement to use that pipe and flex it around those curves?
Yes, the easement is 30 feet wide. I'm gonna delineate the easement right now. Best I can, but that easement is 30 feet wide, which starts from the north side of the property at 121. And goes that way. So that's a pretty good easement we have right here. And that's all the easements that was recorded, approved, agreed on by the parties in 1999. So we have ample room. I also too just had a trench detail which showed that I assume it's gonna be 10 feet wide for disturbances. But we certainly have enough room to do that because it would probably be done by a mini excavator, and the mini excavator is only probably about 6.5 feet wide. So even with the 30 foot wide easement, there's enough room for the term 90 during the excavation, which is only gonna be 2 foot wide to trench, and then to put the spoils on it, so we have more than ample room.
Okay.
Bob, is the location where you have the big purple dot, is that the end of the sewer main and that's why you're turning into it?
That sewer main goes on all the way down, quite a ways, all the way down to, forgot the name of the road, but it goes down for a couple of miles, yes, further south.
No, how about the other direction?
The other direction going north,
Yeah,
that actually goes up to the old IBM facility.
so I'm just.
Actually, yes, that goes up to the IBM facility, which actually goes along the right of way of the Taconic.
So just, and you may have said this and I may have missed it, the purple line that you're putting in coming down, it can't go straight into the sewer main, it's gotta make that turn and go parallel to the sewer and then connect at the purple dot? Because of the two different systems?
Because that is where the gravity section of the sewer starts.
Got
I
it.
just put another red circle there and all these different colors, apologize for that. But that's where the gravity section starts, and that's where it goes south.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Now, there was a letter written by the neighbor that lives right here, 123 Pines Bridge Road, which is north of the property we're going to be utilizing the easement. I just put an X there with a circle. And she did have some concerns about it. I think I answered question one. I don't know if you have it or received it, but we didn't get it at the last meeting. One of her questions are, what is the reasoning for the need for this line? It's basically to fulfill the recreation goals, to have more programming for children and kids that live in the town of Newcastle for camps during the summer. That's the whole reason behind it. Then she has question number 2. I'll read it and I'll refer to Dennis on this. It says, what about the trees along the path and the wetlands? I'll read it verbatim and then Dennis can chime in. It says the proposed line route goes directly through 23-year-old evergreens, old growth trees and their root system. These trees form a site buffer between the house and help stabilize water runoff during the rainstorms, which has left large erosion grooves. Much of the path runs along the wetlands at the far section of the yard at 121 Pines Bridge. It would be ecologically attentive to cut down these trees or destroy their root systems. I went over with Dennis. I'm going to turn it over to Dennis, and he can explain the reasoning and the justification behind that.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, I can see the light. Yeah, so I actually, Bob made a good suggestion. I grabbed the approved planting plans I was able to get from 2001 for both 121 and 123 Pines Bridge Road. 121 did not include any plantings in the sewer easement, not to anyone's surprise. I wouldn't have recommended that either. 123 has plantings proximal to the sewer easement, and from what I could tell, based on the cluster formations and the species list, all those trees are still there and they can be there, they're outside of the sewer easement. So 123, I believe who's the author of the letter, is not gonna lose any of the trees. As far as the trees that and shrubs that I sort of inventoried going along that path. I got about 6 Norway spruces, a red cedar, some burning bush, an ornamental that I think is a viburnum. I have a question mark next to lantana. I know you guys were still hanging on which species you thought I was. And a couple of honeysuckles. So to me, whatever plantings you do on a sewer easement, that's finite, I think, at the end of the day. I mean, I wouldn't plant anything woody over a sewer easement, a water main. I mean, that's just, it's not sustainable. So in this case, I don't have an issue with the trees themselves. And, you know, from the looks of the wetland that exists, I mean, it's a pretty dense growth system. It doesn't look like the limits of it have changed from the 2001 drawing, and there always was sort of this easement that, and still is today, it's a fairly easy walk because it's maintained as a turf cover area, which again, that's what I would recommend for an easement as well. So I'm not behind the concerns that, you know, the removal of these trees and just maintaining the easement as an easement is gonna be an issue for the easement and or the adjacent wetland. And all these disturbances are gonna be temporary in nature and subsurface and permanent installation, and then, you know, restored at the surface to pretty much what they should be as sort of designed for 2001.
Right, and I think in fact, we've had even recent applications where an applicant has proposed to plant over an easement and either you or Bob or DPW has said, no, you can't do that. So
Right.
they've had to change the plans, because it just as a normal course of practice, we like to keep that clear because every once in a while it needs to be accessed
Yes,
for maintenance or otherwise. So, okay, got it.
thank you.
Understood, thank you. Anyone else, any questions?
I got one more question for Bob. Bob, I got one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
Assuming this all goes well, 20 years from now, if they wanna put more toilets in, is this 4-inch line large enough to handle it? Or is the town gonna have to come back and pull out the 4 and make it a 6?
Well, that's a good point. We can design it for future, but the only problem you have is a lot of these pumps are set for 2-inch, but you know, I think to answer your question, I can pull up Liberty pumps. Because what most engineers do now, Greg, is they have pre-designed, pre-engineered pump systems, which are all pre-engineered, and I can ask him to do the calculations. They have all the software in their office as well. These are engineering and sales technicians for Liberty pumps.
Right?
And I can ask them that very same question to see the maximum capacity. But I would imagine it does, because the pumps curve for this system we're selecting has a total dynamic head of 110 feet.
Gotcha.
So that 110 feet is more than three times the elevation difference from the low point to the pipe we're going into, which is about 32 feet. But that's a very good point. I can bring it up with the sales engineering tech, and I'm sure the answer would be it could handle quite a bit of flows.
So the diameter of 4 inches is okay?
Actually, I spoke to the sales tech, his name was Austin, and he said they recommend, no matter what the flows are, 2-inch pipe, that's it.
Oh,
Because if you make the pressurized pipe too big, you have problems with the pumping themselves, and I'm sure Richard can chime in on this with cavitation and all the problems you have with pumping. If Richard wants to chime in, be my guest, but you have to be very careful what you use for the pressurized system.
gotcha, okay.
Bob, what's the distance from the bathrooms to that first pit?
Bathrooms to the first pit I have on the first sheet is about 325 feet. So the pump pit from the, I have it right in there, 330 feet. That just brings so much. And then from the pump pit to the gravity section of the manhole over 121 is about 525.
You said you're using a prefab 2-pump system, so both
Yes,
sales.
yes, sir, it's a duplex system. That's always the way to go, to have the two systems side by side. So that's a total run of about 855 feet, including the gravity section from the bathrooms in the Amsterdam carriage house to the pump pit, which is a low point obviously, up to the gravity section along Pines Bridge Road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Oh, you're welcome.
Dick, did you have any questions?
No, I'm with you.
Okay, good. Yes,
It's
sir.
just a little bit more addressing and evaluation. The only concern I have is that 2 inches is kind of narrow.
Yeah.
If you know, the kids use too much toilet paper or this or that, 2 inches might be a problem, even though it's pressurized.
Is it a grinder pump, Bob?
Yes, sir, they're all grinder pumps, yes, they are. I think 1 horsepower, 2 horsepower pumps, yes.
I mean, I put 130,000 gallons a day through a 3-inch line, so hopefully people aren't going to this bathroom that much.
Hopefully.
Based on the water usage.
It's almost TMI.
Based on the water usage, the amount of people that use this, I calculated about 150 gallons per day.
Okay.
That's not a lot of water, so hopefully. Oh, is there a way to run
Don't think that gets in there if people throw
or anything like cleaners and this is not a clean water situation, is it? This is,
No.
we're getting rid of the feces and all the other stuff.
That is correct, it's everything straight through, just empties right out of the bathroom. There's no septic tank outside, I checked with the county on this, matter of fact, I'm covering all the bases. I sent a whole engineering report and everything up this whole thing, who works with Westchester County Department of Health, I just wanna make certain they don't need approval. Their cutoff, where it needs county approval, is 2,500 gallons per day. Obviously, we're well below that, with 150 gallons per day.
Good, okay. I think Alan thinks it should require a SWIP though. It's inside joke. Yes, sir. Anyway, yes, sir, I
No
don't
problem. My name is Brian Kaplan and I own 15 Hope's Cross Road, which is right opposite the park. I'm not opposed to the plan, but I do have some questions relating to the plan. I think the plan is appropriate as far as giving the attendees who go to the park the ability to go to the bathroom and not have to run home, so I think that makes sense. I do have a few questions though. The pond that we have, which is a 1.25 acres to 1.5 acres, which is on the diagram now, is I guess the big area there is, Dennis, is that the pond on the diagram?
The pond on the property, or the pond off property?
The pond off the property.
Like, oh, do you mean?
I just highlighted in red, guys.
I think you're over to the right, yeah.
Okay, then I'm looking at the wrong,
Yeah, you're
I'm looking
turning.
at the wrong, there's a different diagram that Dennis gave me. I'm wondering if we could possibly put that on the screen, if it's possible.
We have that, I think we have that one.
We do.
It just make it easier for me to describe my questions.
Hang on a second. You have it.
Are you the old Gershwin house or the?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
While they're looking, I guess the first question I'd have is, do we, the pond that's on my property, is the water source for the pond, from my understanding from Dennis, is basically groundwater that seeps going downhill from various areas, including the golf course, to get into my pond. My pond has got fish in it, it's got wildlife, and the question is, are we sure that the excavation process isn't gonna have any impact upon the water source or flow of water to get into the pond? So that would be number one question. Second question would be, God forbid there's a problem with the sewer line and a breakage, what precautions are there to make sure that there's no seepage of materials from the bathroom into the pond that would affect the wildlife there? So those are my first two questions, and then I just have one other question when we get the diagram up about what might be cleared, because it appears as if the line that's being anticipated is only gonna be a few feet from the far corner of my property, and right now there's shrubs and other things there, and if that's all taken down, obviously I would like to know about that sooner rather than later. So if I can I go to the screen for a second?
You can use a pointer.
Pointer.
Be careful with your laser.
Okay, so
Is it working? It's the end of the season. Here,
There we
it's
go.
sort of working.
Well, they might ask, yeah,
There we go, thank you.
That was this one here.
This one works better, I think.
There you go.
There, that's good.
I'm good. Okay, so my property line includes the pond there, and then it goes all the way to the corner here. And right now, there's a whole bunch of shrubs and small trees that are there. Is that whole area gonna be cleared for purposes of the installation that we're talking about?
Can you see it, Bob?
Basically, to answer the question, we assumed as a very conservative width during the construction of the sewer main. The sewer trench itself is gonna be at the most 2 feet wide. And the piping, either 2 inches or 3 inches, would obviously fit in that width. We assume the worst case scenario, it's gonna be 10 foot of disturbance during construction. Probably anything not more than that, because probably be done with mini excavators, which are about 6.5 feet wide to begin with. Maybe another foot or so for spoils, which is all gonna be opened up and covered sections at a time and stabilized with grass and seed. So that's what we're doing as far as mitigation during construction. The pipe does have to go down 4 feet so it doesn't freeze, in light of the fact it's a force main. I checked with a lot of authorities on this, and they do recommend it's 4 feet, because if it's not used in winter months, or it could freeze up, it could be a problem, so it does have to go down 4 feet. To answer one of your questions about any type of leakage, the piping coming from the carriage house to the pump pit will be pressure tested. That's probably gonna be a 4-inch PVC pipe. The piping from the pump pit to tie into the manhole is gonna be one solid piece, they call it polyline. So there's gonna be no joints in that system in any way, shape, or form, which is gonna be closest towards your property on the north. Maybe there'll be one joint that makes special equipment to fuse the piping together, which is gonna probably be up by the manhole. So between those precautions that we will take during construction and after construction to ensure the integrity and the workmanship of the piping, we will do all that to make certain it does not leak.
Okay, so
And what we do also too, we do cover it 6 inches on the bottom, 6 inches on the side, probably more because it's a 2 feet wide trench, 6 inches on the top with old dead sand, which is the best way, recommended way to include and to cover any type of utility, so there's no type of pipe or movement or rocks around there to possibly break the pipe open. All the utility companies, Con Ed does it, the county recommends it all the time. We will do that here to ensure that the pipe itself is surrounded by very good material that will not impact it or break it or crush it.
So your expectation is that the width and depth of the project is not going to interfere with any groundwater that would be seeping into the pond, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Just going back to the question I asked before about
Can
that.
you use the microphone?
Sorry.
You can take it off
You can
there.
take it off.
Sorry, just going back to the question I asked before about this area right here, which is where my property line is. Do we know how close to my property line the project is gonna be?
that easement going through lot 14 on the map, which is 121 Pines Bridge. That easement itself is 30 feet wide, so we're gonna try to keep it on the southerly side of the easement as best we can, so we don't get too close to your property. With that, so we should have some buffer there, which could be mitigated at the end.
Okay.
It is a 30-foot wide easement. We just need about 10 feet of it, so we need about 1/3 of that easement.
Does just so that I know, cause I haven't looked at that property, does that easement go all the way to my property line or is it set back a bit?
That easement starts at the west side of lot 14 and is 30 feet wide and goes all the way down until it intersects the easement along Pines Bridge Road. And that easement along Pines Bridge Road is probably about 50 feet in width. So to answer your question, it would be contiguous with your property.
Okay. Got it.
So, for the vegetation that we spoke about, right? So, yeah, the majority of the line is over turf cover, maintained turf cover, with the exception of which I define as a hedgerow area, because that's in essence what it is. There are two trees there, they're both shagbark hickory side, and they're growing side by side, they're also covered in some vines, but I had spoken to Bob that, you know, it doesn't look like that there's a need to remove those trees, and if necessary, I would, you know, require some form of protection during excavation, because I like hickories, I like oaks, that's just, and they're native, they're good trees. The hedgerow, you got 1 out of 5. There's chokecherry in there, but you got non-native honeysuckle, oriental bittersweet, porcelain berry, and multiflora rose. So, whatever needs to be carved out of that hedgerow in order to accommodate the construction. And to Bob's point, I'm assuming, and this is a bit of a question, that whatever that corridor needs to be maintained as the rest of the easement now as turf cover, presumably that's gonna continue to be maintained as turf cover, and then anything beyond that potentially could be replanted, I guess would be replanted, but whatever the defined width, as with sort of the existing easement, if that needs to be maintained open so that it's, you know, there's a break in the hedgerow now, you know, as defined by the line that went in, that opening would presumably remain. I just don't know what that will.
But we don't know what it's gonna look like now, cause it depends upon how they construct it, is what you're saying, and what they
Yes.
excavate?
Yeah, so if you could, you know, just theoretically, you know, just cut a window of into the vegetation and just like remove all the salad, and then it would still be hedgerow to one side, hedgerow to the other side, whatever that opening would be, and that would be at the, I guess, line that would, the property line that would form as you're exiting the Amsterdam property and then entering where defines the sewer easement.
Okay, is somebody gonna be there supervising this process to make sure that vegetation that we wanna keep in place stays in place? How does that work?
I usually go out, mark the trees, and, you know, on the plans, we would require some form of protection fencing spread that out as much as we can to try to correlate to the drip line of the trees. And then, you know, I have a small army that will, you know, obviously, you know, attack if if that's violated, but no, seriously, I think for what's here, that's the only thing I'm worried about protecting. I mean, the rest of the shrubs, unfortunately, a lot of what I mentioned, you know, was just gonna wanna grow back in anyway, in an aggressive manner. And I did notice actually that on the Amsterdam Park site itself, they also have some fairly sizable chokecherries that are doing quite well. So if where we can, I'm like the plant whisperer. If that's where it wants to grow and it likes to grow there and it's native, I'm more than happy to, you know, put back where we can. Absolutely.
Thank you for answering my questions, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thanks. Okay, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, can I add just one last thing?
Sure.
Just to make certain we are in the right spot, we will be going out to RFP to have all the property line stakes, especially along 121 Pines Bridge, and in particular along those easements by a New York State licensed professional surveyor, so we know exactly where we are. And once we know where that is, Dennis will obviously go out there and pick the best route. Because this is a force main, it could be a little bit, there could be some curvature to it to avoid things that we may have to, so I just wanted to throw that in just to make certain we do have a lot of belts and suspenders during this construction.
Okay, thank you.
Nicole Roche, 39 Old Oak Road. I have no objection to this, but I just had a couple of questions for clarification. So one, I assume that this connection is going into the sewer line that was put in by IBM in the 80s, okay? And so did you have to get permission? Are you working with them? How does that work?
I think it's a county line, isn't it, Bob?
Yes, this was granted to all of the lots on the IBM Hudson Hill subdivision with an agreement, called the sewer agreement filed in 1998, which gives all of these lots access and rights to tie into the sewer easement through the sewer easement and tie into that old line that used to be owned by IBM, yes.
Oh, so it's maintained by the county now? I'm asking because it's gone back from the 80s, it's gone back and forth so many times. At one time, it was, IBM was gonna pay for it and all residents could tie into it. Then they made a much smaller pipe, installed a much smaller pipe. So they were still gonna pay for it, but no residents could tie in, although the ones on the IBM property later were able to tie in. And then they were going to give it to the town. No, they were gonna own it, but the town was gonna maintain it, so now it's gone to the county? Is the county maintaining it or the town?
I believe the town does. There's a pump station further south, which we do maintain. The pump station, I believe we do maintain it, yes. IBM abandoned it at the time of the IBM Hudson Hill, that was part of the agreement. For these particular lots on IBM Hudson Hill subdivision to have use of that sewer line.
So you work with the county on this? Or
We
you
did back
can just
then.
put it in, you
We
can just
did
make
back
the
then,
connection,
because
but
we did back then, it was, we did it together with the county, with the golf course and the subdivision. So we worked with them on it, what Bob is conveying to us now is that IBM apparently conveyed
right,
the
but
line to
now
the town.
you can just put it in, you don't have to ask permission from the county or anything.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
Because it's a town line.
I'm just curious, you could,
No,
anybody can just go in and connect.
Because it was under 2,500 gallons a day, there's different requirements.
No, this agreement that was specifically set up by the county and the town only allows those properties which are in that agreement to tie in. Everyone along this main cannot tie into it.
Yeah, I know that, I was
Only
just
the
curious
ones
about
in
the
the
line
agreement.
itself, not about tying in. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, not seeing any other questions. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion?
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we need a resolution for next time around? Okay, so is there a motion to instruct staff to draw up a resolution for the next meeting, September 10, I think it is?
Motion to create the resolution.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good, thank you, Dick. Okay. We move now to our next item, and this is this is an administrative issue here. This is the Gastia 45 North Way. This is an amendment to a resolution of approval for a lot line change. We last heard it back in '23. It was all approved, and apparently they did not file the documents with the county in time, so all they're asking for is an update of the resolution so that they can record it. It really is that straightforward. I understand, right, John?
Correct.
So if you wanna see it, do we have a sketch of it so people, so Jeff and Greg can see it?
Do you wanna open the public?
Yeah, I guess.
I don't
Is there a
have
motion to
Motion to-
open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't have a sketch.
Have a full month of practice at home.
You know, like when you play poker, like, exactly.
Mr. Chairman, I do not have a sketch, we
Okay.
just have a copy of the resolution in the letter.
Okay.
No, I sent that to you, Sabrina, right? I gave it to you, you should have a copy of the file map.
Hang on a minute,
I sent you 3 PDFs.
I see it. This one?
It's the file map.
I got it, hang on a minute.
Thank you, Ms. Sabrina.
We are experiencing technical difficulties.
Please stand by.
So it works better from home.
Yes, it does.
Well, that'll be a lesson to you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to just give a brief description of the
If you would.
historical significance behind what we did. Again, let me draw all over the place, that's what I like to do. Let's see, drawing, what color, I think it's blue. Basically, I'll be real quick here, basically, Mr. Augusta previously owned this piece of property. And back here is town-owned land. This is the town-owned land as well. So, make a long story short, we were coming in with, Sabrina's doing quite a bit of work on this right now to get grants for this, to be building this thing hopefully in the next 5 years, to build a chap line here, which is gonna be coming closely to the sewer easement. So, what we decided to do, that was the idea of Jill, to say, let's do a land swap. So when we build this, we don't have to go through Mr. Augusta's property. So what we did for the subdivision map is we swapped an area, an exact area, to mimic the new lot line of Mr. Augusta, which is gonna be now here. Therefore, removing the piece in the back that we would have to have crossed if we didn't do the subdivision map. So that's gonna be now owned by the town, where I just drew that big red X. And that is the whole reason for the subdivision act. So we worked with MJ Engineering and Land Surveying. They had to prepare the deeds for the town council to transfer all of this, quite a bit of legal work involved. So that is the reason for the subdivision map. In a nutshell, so right now, to Bob's point and the attorney's point, when it was rejected, when they brought it down for some reasons that the county are very particular on how this map has to be done. There can't be any gray tone, there can't be any colors on it. So that delayed it so much where it elapsed the 62 days. So now, what Bob just articulated on previously, we have to get an amended resolution, a new map signing date by the county, by Mr. and Mrs. Augusta, and last but not least, the chairman. And then we'll have to be within the 62 days of the filing. We have town council send this down to the clerk's office to make certain it's good before we spend a month trying to get it signed by all the parties. So we know it's good to go. And once we get this resolution, we can get everything done, and hopefully I can bring this to Mr. Chairman's signature within the next month or so. And that's pretty much the historical background of this map.
Okay. This is why we're down to a 0 share on TV. In any event, we have a revised resolution, revised plat. So is there a motion to approve those?
Motion.
Second?
We don't have the resolution.
No.
Oh.
There's a motion to make a resolution.
Oh.
It's just a revision, it's an amendment to an existing resolution to change the date.
Okay, so this is not the new one, this is the old.
No,
okay.
that's the old resolution, and I think, and Bob, correct me if I am wrong, this is a date change in the amended resolution due to the filing.
That is correct, Ms. Sabrina.
Okay.
So what do we do?
You are going to make a motion you're gonna close the public hearing, make a motion to approve the amended resolution in relation to the date change.
Okay.
Nothing else.
So is there a motion then to close the public hearing?
Motion to close.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And then as Sabrina said, is there a motion then for the revision?
So motion for the revision of the date?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we stumbled through it.
Okay, rock and roll.
Good enough. Our next
Mrs.
application.
Serena, thank you so much for your help and assistance.
You're welcome. My pleasure, Bob.
It's like a game show.
Exactly.
What's going on? Okay, we go now to our next application. This is Galvin. This is 28 Brevoort Road, application for a preliminary subdivision plat approval to merge two lots through a re-subdivision.
Oh, yes. Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
you should note that the two applications that have been adjourned
Yes.
are adjourned.
okay. Yes, we had two other applications. They were informals. Kolev, 8 Cynthia Court, at the request of the applicant that has been adjourned. Do we have a date? Are we targeting? Okay.
No.
We wait for their resubmission?
Yes, informal.
And then we also had another item, this was Schwartz, 6 Breckenridge Road. That also has been withdrawn at the request of the applicant. And do we have a date on that one? Also, open date? Okay, so when they come in with the material, we will reschedule the informal hearing. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Jacqueline Cohen, associate at Zarin Assignments, here tonight on behalf of the owners of 28 Brevoort, Tom and Kathy Galvin, who are here with me tonight. And also, we are joined by Alan Pilch. And they're here tonight to seek a re-subdivision to merge two lots that were originally created through subdivision back in 1924. So one of the lots is currently developed with a single family home that they currently reside in, and the other lot is vacant. So we are in the R1A district. The resulting lot would be approximately 3.6 acres. There is a current front yard setback non-conformity that's pre-existing non-conforming. Aside from that, both lots are zoning compliant. The resulting lot will be zoning compliant. There's no changes proposed. There's no construction proposed. So I will turn it over to Alan just to take you through the plan quickly. We did delineate the wetland and the wetland buffer that is on the site, as well as look into the other constraints on the site to just map that out for everyone. So I will turn it over to Alan to take you through that.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Alan Pilch, ALP Engineering.
Working on it.
You know I was gonna look at you.
I know. Listen, I'm happy to help you. It just, we
Thank
need
you.
a new requirement that applicants submit maps separately from their applications electronically.
They do.
Then why is it all together?
Because that's how I put it.
You killed me.
That was me, I'm sorry.
Alright, let me share this.
Well, if you'd like, I'll at least start.
Sure, please.
So the main lot, the lot that the Galvins reside on is 106,215.9 square feet. The rear lot on the right-hand side there is 50,520.03 square feet. Wetlands were delineated by Alexandra Moat. And there was, I don't mind never works on that screen. Try not to get this skywalk. Oh, that works. So this is the rear lot that we are referring to, and this is the front lot that the Galvins reside in at present. There is a wetland that was delineated. That's the wetland boundary. It was delineated by Alexandra Moat like a month and a half ago or so. And it was survey located by TC Merritt's land surveyors, and the 100-foot buffer is, it's right here, that's where it's located, or it goes through there, that's where it is. That's a 100-foot buffer, and we calculated that on that rear lot, 34.4% of that lot is actually within the, is in wetland. The remainder, except for 325 square feet, basically located at the corner here, is outside of the wetland buffer. So I'll say that lot is highly constrained. So anything that, if there was anything going on there, would require obviously permits. Road is up here, and that's where the access could be, but it won't be, because nothing is being proposed. And so we also looked at the coverage calculations and prepared coverage map. And what that showed as well was just calculating all the coverage on the existing the 28th Revert Road lot, and it showed that the building and development coverage for both lots was obviously the front lot is compliant. There's 0 on the rear lot, but that's what it showed as well. And so that's really all there is to it. As I say, most of that rear lot's constrained, but it's together with the 3.5 acre property. Would be, so would be, I want to say that's what it would create.
So by combining the two lots, I'm assuming you increase the development area on the lot to the left now,
It would.
right? Because I'm trying to think, why would you do this other than for the future development of that lot?
You might do it also for
Yeah, so it's
Sure.
really, so they are, if I may, so they are selling the property. This is really just to simplify things. They've also talked to the assessor's office. There may be an opportunity to reduce taxes through the
Okay.
through the merger. But also, I mean, in terms of development potential, so the buffer, the adjacent lot is almost entirely wetland buffer.
Correct.
So that would limit development on that lot as well as on the lot as a whole.
But the main lot becomes bigger now theoretically because your development numbers have gone up, right? Because the lot's bigger, so the ratio goes up on the dry portion.
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
And of course, I mean, any
Which is
future-
fine, I don't think anything nefarious is going on, I'm just,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and of course, I
That's
mean,
why I would do it.
yeah, and of course, we can't speak to the intent of the, future owners of the house, but I mean, any future development's gonna have to achieve, get town review and approval regardless, especially if, there's anything proposed for within that buffer. And also, I mean, that kind of brings me, so tonight, I mean, our ask tonight is that your board waive its jurisdiction over this re-subdivision, because we believe it's so minor in nature. The town code does permit your board to waive its jurisdiction over re-subdivisions, if it's gonna be consistent with requirements of subdivision design, it's not significant in terms of development impact, and it will not hinder or preclude future use of the site, or the surrounding sites. And for the reasons we've described before, because of the limits of this back lot here, that would, serve as a restriction to future development. The rest of the lots are already developed with single family homes. This lot itself, the use isn't gonna change, there are no changes proposed, it's currently hooked up to town water and sewer. And so for those reasons, we are asking that you waive your jurisdiction, but if you do not choose to waive, we would ask that we proceed with a public hearing and resolution for next meeting.
Okay, very good, thank you. Sabrina, you got some thoughts on this?
I actually have no comments, everything is compliant,
Everything's compliant.
there's a pre-existing front yard setback, but everything else is completely zoning compliant, the coverage, without the addition of the land, they're completely compliant, even with development coverage, and there's quite a lot of development on the lot, so it's coverage, I don't think is a reason that they're looking to
Right.
merge the lots. As far as the re-subdivision doesn't mean you don't have a public hearing. Re-subdivision means the board has the ability to combine preliminary and final subdivision. So ostensibly,
If we waive jurisdiction.
if you waive jurisdiction, then we can hold a public hearing and have a resolution prepared for the first meeting in September. So just to clarify that for you, it doesn't negate a public hearing.
And your thoughts are that
And I'm fine with that,
waiver
exactly.
jurisdiction on this case?
I would recommend that you do waive, there's nothing that I see that is an issue.
Okay, good. Bob, you had a couple of thoughts, comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Alan shows the wetland buffer on both of his plans, but I would highly recommend that the wetlands buffer 100 foot be shown on the subdivision map as well to memorialize it, since it will be filed with the county. But I think it will be helpful to do that as well in case this person comes in the future. Because I would think in my mind, the filed map sometimes is more readily accessible than some site plan that sometimes is not always found all the time. So I recommend that to be shown, and it's always, as far as I know, it's always common practice to show the wetlands buffer and the wetlands on a subdivision map. That's number one. Number two has been resolved. I spoke to Josh Sherman today, the sole assessor of the town of Newcastle. He did receive questions from the surveyor. He acknowledges that that is okay to do so. Number two has been resolved as we speak and was done today this morning. And those are my comments.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I would just like to point out that the re-subdivision plat that we brought here too, which is just, let's say, created like by yesterday, by the surveyor, T.C. Merritts, does include, just so you know, Bob, the wetland buffer and the wetland by flag locations all shown on that plat.
Okay.
So it's
Okay, great.
on the map.
Great.
So we'll
Thank you.
submit that.
Yeah, of course. Okay, sentiments of the board members, I would recommend that we waive jurisdiction, move this to a public hearing and direct a resolution be made.
I agree.
Agree.
Okay, so do we have a motion then to waive jurisdiction? I think we should do that first.
Motion to waive?
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 And then the next thing, I guess, is to schedule this for a public hearing for September 10th, I think it is. And should we direct the staff to prepare a resolution in anticipation of that, closing the public hearing at that meeting?
Please prepare a resolution.
Second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If I could request the applicant to submit the map, this subdivision map with the wetland information on it, that way we don't have to do a condition of approval that calls for that.
Sure.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you very much.
so I think we're set.
We're set. Thank you.
As fast as we can do it. Okay, very good,
Just
thanks.
also, can I add one thing, Alan, don't forget to bring in the Mylar of the plat as well.
I will request that of T.C. Merritts. That they remember to do that.
Because the chairman has to sign that, obviously. We have to get it signed by the applicant, and you're gonna bring it up to the county, and then you bring it to us last, right, Alan?
Yes, indeed. The signature block is on the re-subdivision plat.
Yeah, just give me a PDF of what you have, really, just bring this point so I know what meets all the conditions of my memo.
Yes, if you would be kind to review it this way, we'll have, make sure we all have it ready to go. For time for, well before the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, terrific, thanks. Okay, we have a matter on here, this is the referral that we have from the town board regarding the Indian Brook Croton Gorge intermunicipal watershed. This is a proposed law action for the adoption of the watershed protection overlay zone for the Indian Brook Croton Gorge watershed. So we talked about it last time informally at our gathering, not a meeting, but a gathering, and Sabrina went through it with us. I guess we could do it again, very abbreviated for great benefit.
Sure,
I did skim through the document.
you did, and so.
So anyway, we at some point and this is the point, because this is due back to the town board when? Very soon.
They are discussing it, it's tentatively scheduled for the town board meeting on August 13th, so this is the last time, you should come to
Some sort of conclusion.
if you wanna do a memo either in support or say we received it, thank you very much, or you just wanna leave it, it's up to you as to how you wanna proceed,
Right.
but just to give you a sense of what this is, the Indian Brook Croton Gorge watershed communities, there's 5 of them. Newcastle is one, the town of Cortland, the village of Croton on Hudson, and the town and village of Ossining compose the municipalities in the Indian Brook watershed. based on previous town boards, administrations, there was a desire to do higher levels of protection in the Indian Brook watershed area, which really supplies the Osnings and Croton-on-Hudson with their drinking water source. This takes off of an effort back in the day, in the 90s, I think, early 2000s, that Westchester County had prepared the Indian Brook Croton Bay Watershed Protection Plan. And there was a desire to move forward and implement some of the recommendations of that plan. The thought was for the municipalities to come together and try and create a unified overlay protection district whereby we would all have similar regulations. Newcastle being primarily large lot, single family residential, and given the existing condition of our environmental regulations, we are much more protective than any of the other municipalities involved in this effort. So really it was an opportunity for those municipalities to try and come up to our level of protection. Regardless, this area of the town, the legislation that is before the town board will identify a specific mapped area, and there's a list of properties within that area that will be subject to heightened permit conditions. Many of the legislative requirements are elements that your board automatically implements. For example, when you have a subdivision come before you, let's say it's anywhere from a 3 to 5 lot subdivision, you ask them to do a conservation subdivision. What you don't mandate is that there's a specific percentage of area that is set aside for conservation. The Indian Brook Watershed Overlay Zone says that at least 30% of the land area has to be set aside. So it's just really defining in a more specific terms a minimum of set aside for a conservation subdivision. Many times your board does a lot more.
The question on that, do you think, maybe it's for John also, do you think having this in the western part of town could compromise our ability to require something more than 30% of conservation development somewhere else in town? Where people go, should be just 30%, look what you have over here in the western part of town. Just as a,
I always view these applications as sort of sui generis. You know, that you can do more than 30% in the western part of town.
yes,
You know, you would be mandated to do that
yeah, minimum.
Minimum.
But based on the application and your discretion, you would view what you felt appropriate based on the application before you. I don't view that as controlling, that 30% in this case is somehow 30% in that case.
Okay, good. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know, do you want me to go through the differences
No,
like
yeah,
I
I
did
think you
last
should.
time? You know, I think that in general, we don't see a lot of large lot subdivisions anymore. You know, in the western side of town, it's all septic systems. And the only thing that you've seen in the past 6-7 years is Sunshine Children's Home, which is a special exception use permit. And now with Amsterdam, they wanna put in the sewer pipeline in an easement, which really doesn't.
And that pipeline cannot be tapped into by any property in that area other than the ones associated with the original IBM Hudson Hills Golf Course?
Yeah.
And is that why the mosque couldn't tap into it?
Correct.
That is correct. That is correct. We had conversations with them when Jerry Marshall was here, and they couldn't do it because they had to go through Osney, and they said no. It's only for those properties that are clearly identified in the easement that I just discussed previously.
So if somebody were to compile all the land around that area, they still could do a subdivision that tapped into that?
Correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay, thanks.
Yeah.
There goes my plan for buying up the whole neighborhood.
But
Now
you
we
go
know-
to the
now we know
bathroom
why
at
you came
Amsterdam.
back.
That's right, get back.
And so the town board continued their public hearing on this to August 13th. They have taken the approach that they wanna wait for all of the other towns to adopt the legislation. To date, I know that the Osnings were considering adoption this month in July. I'm not sure where they are, but that's the status.
Okay.
I know the community, the public hearing before the town board, there was a lot of the community present. Many of the commenters were also present during development of the Sunshine Children's Home. And they had a lot of the same concerns. And there's an overall concern that this is very controlling, when in actuality, in the table that I prepared, a comparison of the actual overlay requirements with the town code, there's only a handful of areas that are a little bit more egregious.
The parts of Yorktown that cover like T-Town Reservation and the IBM property, that's outside of that, the water's flowing the opposite way at that point?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct, that is in the east of Hudson watershed.
gotcha, okay.
So, and the one big area, there's also another requirement in this overlay to inspect and pump out septic systems every 3 years. In the east of Hudson watershed, it's once every 5 years. So that's a little more often than what is required in the east of Hudson watershed.
I think the other issue, because we heard from Nicole last time, also some of the concerns with the de-icing.
Yes.
Some of the concerns over the limitation of de-icing properties.
Right.
Um,
And the town board has the ability to change that language if they so choose. So basically the process that will be is that the town board is holding the public hearing, they will collect all of the comments. And then based on comments, a draft town local law will be produced that's responsive to comments for the town board to consider. So the de-icing, clarification on de-icing, that, you know, it's really a best practice to try and use the smallest amount as appropriate, if you will, for safety purposes, whether it's on public or private property. You know, we could create language that kind of narrows that down a little bit. I mean, and again, it's like before you add fertilizers to your property, you should do a soil test to determine what type of fertilizer you need to add. It's just one more step.
I have a question about the 2-year versus the 5-year
3-year versus
cleanup
5.
time. I think that 5 years would be great for, you know, homes that are not that old. But when you get into homes that are older, you know, there can be some problems, you know, that are in the the drain pipes and things like that. So those are easier to catch when you're doing things every 2 years as opposed to finding trickles down the street.
So I think it's, and to your point, Dick, some of the technology that was used many years ago is very different from what we do now with tanks and fields, et cetera. And some of that leads to problems and difficulties, it seems to me. You know, just over the years, anyone that's on a septic in the house in the 1920s is like, whew, could really have a problem. It could work perfectly well, but it could really be a problem because the technology is different. It seems to me that the goal of this obviously is to protect watershed and protect drinking water. But is the document, do you perceive this document to be a living document that can be changed, or is it going to be too much effort? And the reason I ask that is because it seems to be focused on, you know, things that we all know are problems, stormwater, surface runoff, et cetera. But, you know, we're all reading about the plastics in our water supply, in our groundwater, in our brains. The pharmaceutical drugs that are in there, I mean, I don't think any of the fish will ever have a heart attack, all the statins that we're pumping into the ground. So, I mean, what do we do about that? It seems, you know, we're talking about chloride, salts, or, you know, herbicides, pesticides, petroleum, obviously, and you know, solid waste, et cetera. Where are we in terms of what is perhaps even more as serious anyway, in terms of protecting and avoiding, and of course mitigation and removal? Do we have any thoughts on this? Is the state thinking about this at all?
I do not know if the state is thinking about that at all. You know, the legislation is really for Newcastle referencing existing legislation that we already have in place. I don't know that we would wanna be the leaders on trying to control the plastics issue, for example. You know, there's a lot of pilot programs regarding garbage reduction, if you will. I don't know about Newcastle, but in other towns where they're restricting town services to a limitation of the number of bags type of thing. So I think that changes are going to happen. It's just a matter of which changes we as a town government regulate as opposed to a higher agency. But I hear nothing about the use of plastics and the concern in drinking
Oh,
water.
and the so-called permanent chemicals that we're hearing
Yeah,
about as well.
I can tell you that the state's MS4 permit is much more egregious than previous permits, and the town is grappling with how we're going to comply with that at this moment. And that is in regard to stormwater and many of the elements in the Indian Brook overlay
Yep.
district. So, unfunded mandates galore.
Okay. Good. Anyone else, any thoughts, comments? I had a couple of quick things that I mentioned last time around. That was one comment I would make is that whatever application is developed for activities within this area, you know, I think any contractor signing up should be forced to make a statement that they are familiar with the contents of the regulation and that they agree to abide by it. Pretty simple. I don't know if that goes in the legislation or if that just goes on the application form, but that would be, I think, something that would be fundamentally important to add. And the last one,
If I may comment on that, so when we receive applications, for example, right now, building permit applications, we identify whether or not they're within the East of Hudson watershed or not. If they're in the East of Hudson watershed, there's a set of review principles that get implemented. If they're not within the East of Hudson watershed, then those review principles are not applied. It would work the same way. You know, we'd have a check based on an address, is it within this watershed? And then we would notify the property owner that they have to abide by these requirements.
well, I understand that, but this would take it one step further, and that is it's almost a quasi licensing type of situation for contractors for whatever kind of disturbance that they're going to work on in the watershed, is that they understand that there is an agreement, they've read it, they're familiar with it, and they agree to abide by it. I think too often in this town, we see the Sunday contractors going out and doing this stuff on their own, and they know darn well what they're doing, and they know darn well they're breaking the law, and I think it's just one of those things that if we're worth doing this, it's worth enforcing. So I think that's one way of sort of like quasi self-enforcement. The other issue I had was, I mentioned it last time, in page 10 under enforcement, I'm not quite sure what those slashes mean, but I would certainly insert instead of slashes or. So any one of those officers could have the authority to enforce the rules out in the field or otherwise. I'm not sure what those slashes mean. It might be that they mean all three have to agree, for example.
No, it means that it's an or.
Okay, so I'd put ors in because an or is
We'll
clear.
put the words or in.
Yes, and the other thing, last thing I had was on page 8, and it might be in other places, it refers to an F1, development of wetlands. I would just say disturbance of wetlands. Development could mean something else, disturbance is, I think, broader. But otherwise, I think, personally for me, I think it's a very worthwhile project, a worthwhile endeavor. And good to see that finally the towns have gotten together to try to protect this drinking water.
Mr. Chairman, do you want your three comments to be noted in a memo to the town board? How do you want
and does anyone else have any additional comments?
Yeah, I mean, who enforces the lawn chemical applications for the town? Nobody?
So, right, that's one of those conditions where if you review chapter 137, there is mention of where those can be used and in accordance with manufacturer specifications and licensed applicators. So, no, there's not somebody out there to see, okay, you're now breaking the threshold of what's defined as the planting bed / curtilage of the home and now moving towards the broader property that would be considered the wetlands buffer that's not defined as, you know, what can be in and around the residence. It's not that specifically defined, and then therefore, you know, to be blunt, even if you try to enforce it, I mean, even if I had a GPS unit, you know, what line am I drawing in the sand, so to speak?
It's gotta be self-enforced by the applicators who have state licenses, who are supposed to, right?
Do the right thing.
Right thing, and I mean, the reputable groups, I would assume, they know what the opposite side is, which could be NRDs, where if that gets into starts going into places and that there's no cap on that, so.
I mean, have you, just as an example to what you're saying, I mean, I know we as the town, as property owners, sometimes I'll get those cards and it'll illustrate the date, what they're applying, and then sometimes I'll get calls from residents just to sort of speak to that, and you know, if my garden is here, would that be a problem, and things like that.
Yeah, cause I think there's this is in addition to what is on the state requirements as far as, you know, applications, but then you see the state vehicles drive by my house and putting down a ton of salt on the hill, you know, and it sits there until the spring. So the state's also not enforcing some of their own. So, alright. Good.
Any thoughts on that, I mean,
No, I mean, I'm in favor of your edits. The de-icing one, I think is a key where, you know, we don't create a situation where you can't put down salt and then someone slides down the driveway because of where we live and what their slope of their driveway is. So, I'm in favor of language that leaves it at the discretion, because let's be honest, most people aren't doing salting themselves in our town. But people are ultimately gonna put down what they need to be safe.
and again, that's a good point, I hadn't thought of that, but even on the salting, it's usually done by outside contractors, so anyone working in that end of our town, the other towns, should be required to understand that you're putting down salt, but you're trying to do it in compliance with this regulation, which I think has language in here that's the reasonably low levels of whatever's necessary for safety, which is, to Dennis's point, is fairly unenforceable, frankly, but hopefully it's reasonably understood and reasonably self-enforcing.
You do see those signs up that say this is
Watershed area, no salt.
watershed area,
Yes.
no salt. I mean, do you try to do more of those signs to I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Densely
do
populated.
Do we require a permit to snowplow and salt in our town?
No.
and isn't the salting done on the town roads by the town and the salting done on the private roads by private people, right?
Correct.
And then the
The
state
state by
also.
the state and the
And the
county by the
state,
county. Well, I guess the town does
Yeah,
something.
so most of the salting is done by the town in the town, I'd say.
Yeah. This is more about people's driveways.
I like to shovel.
I saw.
We haven't had a winter in a while.
We
That's
haven't
true.
had a winter in a while.
You know why? Cause I brought home a 34-inch snow blower, and then after that,
I mean, I know in
Dual
my,
wheels, cup holders, everything, right?
I know in my neighborhood, there's been a conscious effort by all the neighbors not to fertilize, not to put down poison, and not to use salt, because it all drains into the lake.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would,
Oh, that lake is pristine too, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, you know, we live in that neighborhood, and I think a lot of people stick to that rule. And don't salt or put down fertilizer or weed killer anymore, and we don't get algae blooms,
Yes.
knock on wood.
That was my next question, you don't have that green sheen like everybody
We don't
else
have the
in
green sheen.
watershed vicinity, not just Newcastle.
Yeah.
Okay, so can
Did you have
given
any
the
comments
time
about
that? No, I'm
frames, given the time frames. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Dick, did you have any thoughts also on the proposed legislation? Can you buzz Dick? Dick, do you have any thoughts or comments on the proposed legislation?
I don't.
Okay.
I just got out of the lake. Mine was late. My hair's still wet. Nicole Roche, 39 Overlook. So I mentioned last time that I was invited to be on the Indian Brook Croton Gorge Commission back in 2008. So of course I feel very strongly about protecting the drinking water for the town of Ossining, the Croton Gorge, the wells of the people who live in the area, the fauna and flora. I like the idea of getting builders, contractors, or whatever to sign off. In the last year, we have had in that watershed egregious degradation. One example is an owner who carved out a parking area for 4 cars and a truck out of a steep slope that was not even his property. It was and exposed tree roots, and thanks to Bob, he put an end to it, but exposed tree roots, those trees are gonna fall down or have to be taken down. There's drainage problem going right into Indian Brook. So that is happening. So I guess your memo to the town board will be addressing the overlay in the big picture as opposed to getting into the minutia like the de-icing.
Yeah, I think what our
Because
memo-
I feel bad that as Sabrina mentioned, there were a lot of West Enders that came out and had comments, and I know one woman said, oh, well, we really need time to go to the Millwood West End Advisory Board and discuss this, and nobody ever came to our last meeting. We have another one on Thursday, but I think it would be important to get, for the town to get, you know, the 2, 3, 4 most salient objections that could be considered for changes in the document, which is doable. As I mentioned, Cortland made the changes to accommodate the town and neighbors, residents.
I think in general, our memo will basically support the concept and proposed legislation and a couple of those minor comments that I raised. I don't think we can really start to talk about plastics and chemicals and that sort of thing. It's really, it's not in the right zip code. So but I don't think we haven't studied this enough, I don't think, for us to address the de-icing and some of the other areas. What were the other deltas? What were the other controversial deltas that you've heard from the West? Other than just saying it's more controlling, which
Well,
really isn't.
there have been comments about
It's very specific.
yeah, well, the you know, they did not comments were to change the frequency of the septic pump outs.
Okay.
There were comments regarding being able to do things in wetlands, you know, which right now our code allows certain things, whereas this code isn't, and I'm thinking we need to change our own code. But again, this is what the people are saying. I think that other comments that have been made are in relation to the de-icing, you know, but there's not a lot of detailed comments other than you're taking my property, you're reducing my property value that have really been mentioned. So, you know,
There were some, like, there was a gentleman who said that he and his wife, they're getting old and their walkway from the driveway to the door, I guess it was grass or whatever, and they wanted to make it an impervious walkway for safety.
Right, and so but again, that gets to what is allowed within a wetland buffer versus not. And that, you know, that those changes, those comments have to be presented to the town board for them to, in code form, to see if they wanna endorse them.
But would that be potentially a permitted activity if with an application sent in, or is it just
Right now, we have a permit,
Right.
the town of Newcastle has a permitted activity, this code says no.
Oh, okay.
And that's the difference, our code, our wetlands code, when it comes to health and safety, has always been a permitted activity.
Right.
If you wanna put a pool, that's not gonna happen. You know, and there's no reason why we can't just revert back to what our code says, but it's really up to the town board, based on public comment, how they wanna handle that. I mean, like I said before, we have a wetlands code that says you can fertilize in a wetlands buffer. The town board was shocked to find that we allow that.
I mean, there's properties where the entire property is in the wetlands buffer, so, I mean,
Yeah,
really, is it realistic to tell, you know, the land of Newcastle, take it or leave it, this is gonna be your house in perpetuity, I mean, it's not.
Right.
It's not realistic. And I'm the, you know, Lorax, and I'm admitting it's not realistic.
Actually, there was one resident who said she does pump her septic out every 3 years.
Well, I think a conscientious homeowner does know what they have
Yeah.
and they do take care of their property.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Very good, thanks. Okay, so if you could draft up a memo,
Can we authorize that for chairman's signature since you're not meeting?
sure, is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you need that to be
Do
a
you need a motion for that?
Yes,
Motion to authorize chairman's signature
on a memo,
on the memo.
Just in general,
Second.
Ever.
okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Dick. Okay, we have some minutes. This is like the grand finale, it's like the fireworks at the end of the show here. So we have the minutes of May 21. Anyone with any changes?
Nope, none on my part.
I have one thing to change.
I'll just grab it.
Okay, thanks. It's on that one. Is there a motion then to adopt the minutes of May 21?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have the minutes of, we're not adopting these, right?
They're July 21st, I just noticed,
No, it's July 2nd.
July
That's when we
2nd.
met.
July 2, I mean,
That was the gathering,
it
so
said
it's okay.
June, didn't
So
it?
we're really not adopting these,
They don't need to be
yes,
adopted, no.
this is what happened, Greg, in case you wanted to see.
Oh, I read through this.
Unofficially, yes.
And I started
Just
watching
for
the
record
video.
keeping.
Okay. I think that's it. Is there a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the meeting?
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See you in September, as we say in the song, huh?
So what is the